Hi, my name's Merrick. They say I walked away from my family. But the truth is they locked the door behind me and told everyone I left. I paid the mortgage, I kept the lights on, I saved the house more than once. And yet, my name vanished from the deed like I was never there. They gave my home to my brother, toasted him in the backyard while I watched from the shadows. And when I stopped paying, they called it betrayal. But here's the question I can't stop asking. How do you stay loyal to people who rewrote you out of the story? 2 years ago, I walked into First Northern Bank with a check folded in half, clenched in my palm so tightly that the edges left faint creases on my skin. $7,800. That's what it took to keep the house from slipping into foreclosure the first time. My father Calvin wasn't there. No one was. It was just me and the banker who smiled politely as I signed the paperwork. I remember thinking, this is what responsibility feels like. Quiet, heavy, thankless. I didn't expect applause or even gratitude. But when I dropped the receipt in my father's mailbox that afternoon, a part of me still hoped he might say something. Anything. He didn't. Now, standing in the driveway of that same house in early October, I clutched 2 grocery bags with one hand and balanced a bottle of olive oil in the other. The porch light flickered, though it wasn't yet dusk. I reached the door and let myself in. I still had a key. The house smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. The kind of scent that clings to places when you're not part of them anymore. There were hints of cinnamon and that artificial air freshener I would have never bought. I stepped into the living room and paused. The family piano, once draped with sheet music and the occasional dust bunny, had been cleared. In its place was a massive canvas of blue and orange swirls, abstract, emotionless, the kind of thing Sylvan liked. I scanned the walls, the photos of our family vacations, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, the cheesy one at Mount Rushmore. Gone. In their place were minimalist frames with quotes like, "Live gently," and "Energy flows where attention goes." It hit me, not all at once, but slowly. The things that made this house a home were being scrubbed away, not cleaned, removed. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. Irene was stirring a pot of something on the stove. "Hey, sweetie," she said without turning around. "Smells good," I replied. "Tomato soup?" "Pumpkin bisque, Sylvan's favorite," she said, then turned and smiled. "He's been crashing here a few nights a week. It's been good for him." I nodded, ignoring the sharp sting behind her words. I was here every weekend, paying bills quietly, delivering groceries, fixing leaky faucets. But Sylvan showed up a few nights, and suddenly he belonged. "I didn't see the books in the living room," I said. She wiped her hands on a towel. "Oh, those? I boxed them up. We're just making space, trying to bring in some fresh energy." "Right," I murmured. "Fresh energy." I left the kitchen and headed toward what used to be my room. The guest room now. The bed had new sheets, different curtains. A plant sat on the windowsill. Fake, probably. My eyes landed on the wall above the dresser. The shelf where my grandfather's war medals used to sit was gone. Not just empty. Gone. I walked to the garage. Tucked beside the water heater was a cardboard box labeled Old Stuff M. Inside, my debate trophy from high school, a couple of dusty books, a framed photo of me at college graduation. The glass had cracked at some point. You don't move shelves? You erase them. I didn't say anything to Irene when I came back in, just handed her the receipt from the grocery store. She thanked me with a distracted smile, too busy pouring bowls of soup. As I grabbed my coat, I noticed a pair of brown boots by the fireplace. Sylvan's. A hoodie, one I hadn't seen in years, was draped over the armrest. "Has Sylvan moved back in?" I asked, casually. She looked up from the stove. He's staying a bit. You know, he needs the space right now. I smiled, polite, practiced, and walked out. The screen door creaked, then slammed behind me with a finality I didn't intend. But I didn't go back to close it quietly. I didn't reply. I just walked out and let the screen door slam behind me. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Fence on the east side came loose. If you have time, bring the toolbox. It wasn't unusual. I was the one who handled these things, the one who knew where the extension ladder was stored, who kept replacement screws organized in the old peanut butter jar labeled garage hardware. I figured I'd swing by Saturday morning before the weather turned colder. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Sylvan's Subaru was already there. Not parked like a visitor, angled and brief, but backed in perfectly along the curb like he lived there. The mailbox had something new taped beneath our last name. Sylvan, scribbled in red ink under Blaine. My name was nowhere. I paused with my hand on the truck door, letting the engine idle a few seconds longer than necessary. The house looked the same, but something in the way it sat, settled, claimed, felt different. I grabbed the toolbox and walked up the path. The porch creaked under my boots. I used my own key to unlock the door, but as it clicked open, I heard laughter from the kitchen. Not the polite kind, not one of those quick chuckles. This was belly-deep, familiar laughter, like the kind you'd share after a long joke. My grip on the doorknob tightened. Inside, the scent hit me first. Freshly brewed coffee, citrus air freshener, and something floral, maybe that new candle trend. The kind of smell you curate when you plan to stay. In the kitchen, Sylvan was leaning against the counter, wearing my old university hoodie, the gray one Mom gave me when I got my first job offer. Irene was setting out 3 cups of coffee and placing spoons just so, like she'd done this 1,000 mornings before. They both looked up, smiling. "Merrick," Irene chirped. "Perfect timing. Want some coffee? I was just telling Sylvan how helpful he's been. Fixed the gutters last week and he's got mulch plans for spring." Sylvan sipped from his cup, trying to make up for lost time. I set the toolbox on the floor and said nothing. The hoodie clung to his frame like it had always been his. My spot at the table was unspoken for. "I can get to the fence in a bit," I said quietly. "Take your time," she said. "Sylvan's got the main side handled. You can help with the post alignment." There it was again. Not a rejection, just a redirection. As if I'd missed some invisible memo that reshuffled roles in the house. I stared at my mother's face and thought, how do you become a guest in your own history? After the fence was patched, Irene asked for help unplugging an extension cord tangled near her desk in the den. I bent down, detaching the plug from the outlet when my eye caught a browser tab left open on her laptop. It read, "Sylvan Deed Update, Draft." Curious, I leaned closer. The email began, "We'll push your dad to finalize the property paperwork soon. Just keep showing up and being steady. You're the heart of this house." I closed the laptop gently, careful not to make a sound. Irene was humming behind me, sorting a stack of coupons like nothing had shifted. I stood and offered a small smile. "I'll be in the garage a bit," I said. In the garage, the air was cooler. The fluorescent light above flickered once before stabilizing. I moved aside an old broom and found a cardboard box labeled Old Merrick Stuff. Inside, my baby photo album, high school yearbooks, a half-used sketch pad from college, and my diploma rolled into a cardboard tube with a rubber band yellowed by time. A post-it note sat on top. For donation? I didn't feel angry. Not exactly. I felt displaced. Like I'd been emptied from the house in stages. And this box was the last of me, waiting for curbside pickup. On my way out, I walked to the side of the porch where a spare key used to be taped behind the gutter, folded under a loose bit of wood. It was gone. I stood there for a moment, staring at that empty crevice, then glanced back at the door. "They don't need me to have access anymore," I said aloud, softly. That night, I checked the mortgage account like I always did. But something was different. Before I could make sense of the changes, my phone buzzed with a message from Irene. "Come by for dinner Saturday. Just a casual family night. No emojis, no smiley face, no context. Just that one sentence, as if we'd been speaking regularly, which we hadn't." I stared at the message for a while. Something about the wording made me pause. It was too neutral, too sanitized. Still, I said yes. Saturday evening came with an early chill. The sky was clear, and the leaves had turned from gold to rust since I was last at the house. I pulled up just after 6, half hoping the dinner had been canceled. It hadn't. The backyard was lit with fairy lights strung from the gutters to the trees, casting a warm glow over a fully set outdoor table. 6 seats. I counted them twice. Sylvan was already there, planted confidently at the head of the table, wine glass in hand. Calvin stood beside him, pouring Cabernet with the kind of pride I hadn't seen since Sylvan got his first freelance client, and promptly lost them. There were other guests, Mr. and Mrs. Haskins from next door, and Pastor Lynn, retired but still fond of long prayers and longer speeches. "Evening, Merrick," Calvin said, handing me a glass. I nodded and took a seat. Near the corner, naturally. Not next to Sylvan, not near Irene, not beside Calvin. Just out of the way. Dinner started with small talk. How lovely the garden looked, how the weather held just long enough, how Sylvan had taken initiative to tidy the basement. No mention of the months I spent draining my own savings to stop the house from being repossessed. Then it happened. Calvin stood up, cleared his throat, and raised his glass. "To Sylvan," he said, his voice strong and clear, "for being the steady spirit this home needs. It's only right he becomes its steward." There was a beat of silence before the Haskins clapped. Pastor Lynn murmured, "Amen." Irene's smile was soft, like she'd rehearsed it. I froze. The word steward stuck in my throat like a splinter. I paid the mortgage. He poured the wine. I pushed the food around my plate, pretending not to hear the congratulations. But my ears caught everything. Mrs. Haskins said something about new beginnings. Pastor Lynn offered to bless the home officially next Sunday. Home. I waited until the dessert plates were cleared before pulling Calvin aside near the patio. The string lights buzzed above us, the bulbs trembling slightly in the wind. "That was a big announcement," I said, keeping my tone measured. Calvin glanced toward the table, then back at me. "It's not official, just a thought we're exploring. He's grounded now, he's here." "And I wasn't?" He didn't answer directly. "You've got your own place, your own life. And the mortgage on this one. That was the past, Merrick." I nodded once and walked toward the side gate. As I opened it, I passed Mr. Haskins walking his dog. He smiled. "Exciting times," he said. "Heard Sylvan bought the house? Good for him." I forced a smile, said nothing, and kept walking. Funny how silence can be rewritten as absence. What I saw made me close the laptop and sit in silence for a long time. Tuesday rolled around, and I was halfway through my shift when I saw Calvin's name flash on my screen. I hesitated before answering. "Fence is coming loose again on the east side," he said. "If you've got time, bring the toolbox. Nothing urgent." That was it. No, "How are you?" No mention of the weekend. Just the fence. I hung up, grabbed my lunch and sat outside the warehouse dock, staring at the sky, wondering when I became more handyman than son. After work, I drove over. Sunset had settled in by the time I pulled into the driveway. The light from the porch flickered again, but I didn't bother mentioning it anymore. Sylvan's car was in its usual spot, straight and familiar, like it belonged. I noticed a pair of new boots by the door. Not mine. I knocked this time. Sylvan answered, shirt sleeves rolled, a hammer in his hand. "Oh," he said. "Didn't know you were coming tonight." "Dad called," I replied. He nodded slowly. "We've got it mostly handled, but—" "Sure." Calvin was already outside, crouched next to the post with a tape measure. He looked up and motioned to the steps. "Grab the drill. Might need reinforcement." I reached for the toolbox, but Sylvan grabbed it first. "Actually, we've got this now." The words weren't rude, but they cut anyway. I didn't say anything. I tried the side door, my old route through the laundry room, but the key didn't fit anymore. It didn't even turn. I stood there for a beat too long before walking around back. We worked in near silence. Calvin mumbled measurements. Sylvan tossed in suggestions. I stayed on the fringe, hands half busy, mind racing. Later we stood near the grill, Irene bringing out lemonade like it was still 1998. Calvin said, "We just want what's best for both of you. You're doing great, Merrick. You've got your place, a steady job. Sylvan, he's rebuilding. He needs something stable." I didn't reply. Irene added, "It's not about who paid. It's about who needs it most." That sentence, it cracked something inside me, not violently, but clean, like glass under pressure. I looked at her. "So it's not about contribution. It's about being fragile enough to deserve things?" She blinked. "Don't twist it." "I'm not twisting anything. I'm just finally hearing it." Calvin tried to deflect. "Let's not make this heavy. We're just trying to hold the family together." "By rearranging it and hoping no one notices," I said. He didn't like that. "Don't be dramatic." I didn't argue. I picked up the toolbox, walked to my truck, and slid it in the back seat. "This is the last fix I do for this house," I said, voice steady. "I don't live here, and apparently I don't belong here either." Calvin stepped forward, hand raised like he might soften the blow, but I was already in the driver's seat. I reversed slowly, deliberately, watching the house shrink in my mirror. Later that night, back at my apartment, I opened the mortgage portal again. Routine now. But this time I didn't stop at the summary screen. I clicked Account Access. The page loaded. And there it was. That was when I stopped being angry and started becoming strategic. Back at my apartment, I turned off every light but the one above the kitchen sink. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound filling the silence. I opened my laptop and pulled up the mortgage portal again, just like I'd done 100 times before. But this time, I didn't just skim the balance or check that the payment had cleared. I clicked on Account Access. The screen took a moment to load, just long enough for something in my gut to tighten. Primary contact, S. Reese. Secondary contact, removed billing email, sylvanreesemail.com autopay, active. I didn't blink. I didn't even curse. I just sat there, staring at the screen like it was some kind of punchline I wasn't in on. I was financing my own erasure. I backed away from the table, stood up, and walked to the bathroom. Splashed cold water on my face. Not because I needed to wake up, but because I felt like I was sleepwalking through a life I didn't recognize anymore. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was from Calvin. "Let's not complicate things," the message read. "You've got your own life. Don't show up unannounced anymore." I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because part of me didn't want to believe it. No thank you, no we need to talk, no hint of decency, just cold formality, like I was some outsider who'd wandered in without clearance. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on the edge of my couch and let the silence build around me until it felt like armor, the kind of silence that no longer begged to be broken, only sharpened. The next night, Vera came over. She brought takeout, and that calm gaze of hers that always seemed to read my thoughts before I spoke. I handed her the laptop. "They removed me from the mortgage account," I said. She looked through the access list, then turned the screen toward me. "This isn't forgetfulness," she said. "This is structure. Someone is building something, and you're not in the blueprint." We didn't talk much after that. We just sat, sharing shrimp lo mein, letting the weight of it settle. She didn't tell me to fight. She didn't tell me to walk away. She just let me sit in the clarity of it all. Later that night, after she left, I pulled out the drawer where I kept every bank receipt, every wire confirmation, every digital trace of the last 2 years of payments. I started printing, statement after statement, highlighted lines, folders labeled legal, backup, and just in case, personal. If they wanted to write me out, they'd have to explain why the bank still had my name on every dollar. I stapled the last page and sat back, watching the printer cool. The silence returned, but this time it felt purposeful. Not hollow, but firm. Then my phone buzzed again. A message from Sylvan. "Don't be petty. You still have your job and your life. Let us have something too." I stared at the words, the gall of them, the casual cruelty dressed up as brotherly logic. No remorse, no gratitude, just a plea for silence, thinly veiled as fairness. That was the moment I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I opened the banking app and hovered over auto pay settings. My finger didn't shake. That was last Monday. By Saturday, another message from Irene arrived. "Just dinner this time. No guests, family only. 6:30. As if any of those words still meant what they once did. I went. The table in the backyard looked like something out of a magazine spread. Cloth napkins, eucalyptus runners, vintage glassware. Vera hadn't been invited, which was telling enough. When I arrived, Sylvan and Calvin were already seated at the head and right-hand side of the table, respectively. Irene brought out a tray of lemon water and gestured to the seat farthest from them. Left side, edge of the table. Not quite exile, but close. I sat. I watched. Sylvan was comfortable. His voice carried easily as he shared updates on a possible brand consulting project in Minneapolis. Calvin nodded, proud. Irene served slices of roasted chicken and spooned vegetables onto Sylvan's plate with the kind of attention she hadn't given me since I was in Little League. Halfway through the meal, Calvin raised his glass. "To family," he said. "And to resilience. We've had rough seasons, but we're still here, stronger than before. And Sylvan," he glanced toward him, "has really stepped up. He's brought new energy, vision. This home has become a place of grounding for him." Irene added, almost in a whisper, "It's his sanctuary now." The guests clinked glasses. Oh wait, there weren't any. Just us. Family. And somehow, that toast didn't include me. I stared down at my plate. I hadn't touched the food. I paid the price of entry. He inherited the stage. I reached into my bag and placed a manila folder on the table. It was quiet for a beat. Then I slid it across to Calvin. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof," I said, "in case memory's gotten foggy." Inside were 2 years' worth of wire transfers, every auto payment confirmation, and a printed thread of text messages, one from Calvin reading, "You're saving this place for all of us." Sylvan leaned back. "What's the point of this?" I looked at him. "I want to know when it stopped being for all of us. When did it become yours? He chuckled softly. Man, you really can't let go, can you? I turned back to Calvin. I was told this was temporary, a bridge while things settled, that we'd talk about equity, deed, future. But there was no talk. Calvin glanced toward Irene. She avoided my eyes. I found something else too, I added, pulling a second sheet from my folder. Draft transfer Sylvan Reese.docx, created 11 months ago, found it in the shared Google Drive you all forgot I had access to. Irene's voice cracked. That was just a draft. We didn't mean for me to find it, or didn't mean to make it so obvious? No one spoke. I stood slowly, pushed my chair back with intention. You've made your decision, I said. Now I'll make mine. Calvin started to rise. Merrick. No, I said. No more fence repairs, no more groceries, no more silence. You wanted a clean slate. I'm handing you one. I walked toward the gate. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the smell of grilled meat and lost time. I didn't turn back. That night, I sat in the dark with the glow of my phone lighting my face. I hovered over the autopay setting one more time. Then I tapped cancel. The silence that followed that post spoke louder than any argument I'd ever had. I hadn't planned to post anything, but after seeing what Sylvan had done, after watching him parade the house across social media like it was some inheritance won through struggle, it became clear that staying quiet wasn't protecting me anymore. It was enabling him. Vera had forwarded it to me on a Friday night. The caption read, "Grateful to be rooted where love lives, under a filtered shot of the backyard, twinkle lights casting a soft glow across the new patio furniture I didn't recognize." The post was tagged, "Our New Chapter." There was no anger, just a cold, weightless clarity. I saved the image, didn't comment, didn't react, just saved it. Saturday, during lunch at work, a coworker named Steve leaned over with a half grin. Your brother's place is gorgeous, man. Saw it online? You helped him get it, right? I forced a smile, nodding. Something like that. He clapped my shoulder. That's what family's for. Family. When I got home that evening, I threw my keys in the bowl by the door and sat on the couch. I wasn't hungry, wasn't tired, just still. The kind of still that settles when there's nothing left to misunderstand. Then the phone rang. Sylvan. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. I answered and didn't say anything. Why are you being this way? He asked, his voice already tight. You won't talk to Dad, won't respond to Mom's texts. You posted that cryptic crap like you're the victim. I said nothing. He continued, voice shaking now. You always make me feel like I don't deserve anything, like I'm some parasite. I never said that, I replied. But you think it, he snapped. I took a breath. I think you knew exactly who was paying for the roof over your head, and I think you chose not to acknowledge it because it was easier that way. The line went quiet. Then came the sniff. You want me to fail. That's all this is. I hung up. The next morning, Vera and I took a walk around the lake. The trees had turned, leaves crunching underfoot like dried paper. She didn't press me about the call, just handed me a coffee and let the silence settle. After a few minutes, she spoke. If you don't say your version, Merrick, he gets to write the only one that exists. I'm not trying to be righteous, I said. I'm just done being rewritten. She nodded and slipped her hand into mine. That night, I sat at my desk, dim light from the desk lamp casting shadows across the folders I'd compiled. I didn't need another confrontation. I didn't need a fight. I needed to stop erasing myself for the sake of someone else's comfort. I took a photo, just a quick one. A stack of my bank statements, slightly out of focus. In the background, my laptop showed a blurry image of the final mortgage draft, with my name still listed as payer. Nothing flashy, just facts. Caption: "Not everything inherited is earned." I hit post. I turned off the lamp. I didn't need to watch the reactions. I already knew. The first reply wasn't from family. It was from someone who'd been erased, too. But that came later. Tuesday night, I sat at my desk and stared at the banking app on my screen. My thumb hovered over the autopay toggle, the glowing switch that had become muscle memory for nearly 2 years. I clicked it. The confirmation email landed in my inbox less than a minute later. I didn't open it. I knew what it said. I let it sit there, unread, like so many of my questions over the years. By Friday morning, the fallout began. At 9:07 a.m., my voicemail pinged. Calvin's voice came through, rough and low. "Mortgage missed, the bank's calling. Merrick, this isn't like you. Call me." I didn't call him. I didn't even think about it. I saved the voicemail in a folder on my desktop I labeled Debt and Damage. Later that afternoon, I opened my email and pulled together every digital artifact I'd saved. 2 years' worth of bank statements, text threads, time-stamped emails, PDFs, screenshots. I zipped the folder and sent it to Vera. I didn't add a message, just the file. 10 minutes later, she replied with one line: "This is your shield." There was a moment, just a moment, where I wondered if I'd gone too far. But it passed, like a dull headache lifting with the wind. What was too far, anyway? Who decided the borders of dignity? That night, another email landed in my inbox. Subject line: Family Unity. It was from Irene. Addressed to our extended family list, the language was perfectly curated. "We're facing a situation with the house. We ask for unity, not blame. Please do not believe narratives that shame us. Family should be about forgiveness and support, not records and receipts." I read it twice, then again for tone. No names mentioned, no mention of the thousands of dollars I'd paid, no acknowledgement of the choices that had led us here. Just deflection. I didn't reply. Instead, I crafted my own message and blind copied every address that mattered. Subject: For transparency. Attached: the PDF receipts, the timeline, and one audio file labeled Promise 8 months ago. In the clip, Calvin's voice was unmistakable. "Just help now, Merrick. We'll talk deed and equity later, once things settle." The file was 15 seconds long. I closed my laptop. I didn't expect a flood of responses. I didn't expect any. This wasn't about convincing anyone. It was about taking back my name before they finished writing me out of it completely. The next morning, I posted a photo online. No words at first, just a muted image. My manila folders fanned out, mortgage statements partially visible, my name highlighted in yellow. Then a caption. Silence wasn't peace, it was erasure. By evening, the post had been shared 26 times. And then the first comment came in. It wasn't from Calvin. Not Irene, not Sylvan. It was from a woman I didn't know. Her profile picture showed her standing alone on a rocky beach. She wrote, "Thank you. I didn't know how to say it. But this is it." The first call came just after breakfast. I was rinsing out my coffee mug when the screen lit up with Calvin's name. I let it ring out. I knew he'd leave a voicemail. He always did when he wanted to sound measured. "Merrick, the bank said we're 30 days from foreclosure. We can't fix this alone. We didn't mean for things to go this way." His voice cracked halfway through the message. That part wasn't rehearsed. I hit play again. Not because I didn't catch it the first time. I wanted to hear the break, the split between arrogance and consequence. That tiny fracture told me everything I needed to know. I saved the message into a folder titled Debt and Damage, right next to the PDFs of every wire transfer I'd made since this all began. The title was no longer dramatic. It was documentation. Later, Vera sat beside me on the couch, the sun throwing angled light through the blinds. She played the voicemail twice. Her expression never changed. "They never call until they need something," she said, voice low. I stared ahead. That's how I always knew I was useful, not loved. She reached out, squeezed my hand once, then let go. By the following afternoon, a new thread hit my inbox. Subject: Family first. It was from Dennis, my cousin who hadn't bothered to text me since my college graduation. Apparently, this was the moment he found his voice. His email was brief. "Hey Merrick, I heard what's going on. Maybe you should be more forgiving. They're your parents." As if forgiveness was a currency I'd been hoarding out of spite. Then came Uncle Ron. "Think how this looks to everyone else." Followed quickly by a more pointed remark. "What kind of man lets his own family sink?" I didn't reply. I didn't even blink. I saved the entire thread as a PDF and added it to the folder with a new name: Moral Witnesses. That night, as the November wind picked up, I stepped outside without a jacket. The cold snapped against my skin, brutal and clean. I sat on the wooden bench by the entrance of my building, phone in hand. Then another voicemail buzzed through. Beth, Aunt Beth, her voice thick with righteousness. "Your mother's been crying every night, Merrick. You've always been distant. Maybe this is what you wanted all along." I didn't throw the phone. I didn't even curse. I just stared at the screen for a long time, then set it down beside me on the bench. Let them all talk. Let them compare versions. I had proof. They had posture. The street lamps blinked on overhead, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Somewhere a dog barked once, then fell silent. The neighborhood was settling into its evening ritual, dinners being plated, TVs humming in background noise, but my world had grown stiller than ever. Then came the final message. It was from Calvin. No preamble this time, no manipulation, just the text. I was wrong. I never meant to choose, but I did. And I'm sorry. Too late, I know. I read it 3 times, and I didn't feel rage. I felt finality. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my attorney. Thanksgiving week arrived on the heels of cold wind and brittle silence. In Duluth, the sky hung heavy with slate-colored clouds, and even the sidewalks felt reluctant to carry footsteps. I hadn't planned on hearing from anyone, especially not from her. It was just past noon when my phone buzzed. I saw her name and let it ring. The 4th ring broke something in me. I answered. Her voice was stiff, rehearsed. "Merrick, if this is about money, I'll give it all back, every cent. Just stop what you're doing." I paused, letting the static stretch across the line. "If this were about money," I said, "none of this would have happened in the first place." She didn't speak again, just the faint sound of her breath, then the click of disconnection. No goodbye. Just retreat. I didn't throw the phone or feel the need to explain myself to the silence. Some endings don't need punctuation. 2 hours later, my phone lit up again, this time with a message from a friend, Sam. Just a link and a single sentence. "You might want to see this." It was a TikTok video. Sylvan, my brother, sat on the porch steps of the house. Our house. His hands rested on his knees, his eyes red-rimmed. "My own brother chose pride over family," he said, pausing as if the pain needed room to breathe. "I reached out, I begged, but some people just enjoy holding power over others." Overlaid in bold text was, "This is what financial cruelty looks like." I watched the clip 3 times, not because I didn't understand. I wanted to feel something, rage, maybe, but instead I felt still. Not numb, but anchored. Vera sat beside me later, her laptop open, scrolling through the comment section. "That's not cruelty," one user wrote. "That's boundaries. Finally." "He sounds like the kind of son who always had to be reminded to show up," another added. "And one that stung with its precision. Some people drain others, then cry when the faucet is turned off." Vera read each one aloud, like she was reading from a gospel of validation. I didn't stop her. Instead, I said quietly, "This is what it looks like when the truth starts to breathe." Later that night, as the sky deepened into indigo, a new message arrived. It wasn't from anyone I knew. It read, "I'm in Oregon. My mother did the same to me. Took everything. Called it love. Thank you for not funding your own erasure. I stayed silent. You didn't." I sat with that message for a long while, then replied, "You're not alone." Nothing more. Nothing dramatic. Just recognition across the distance. The next morning, a manila envelope landed with a soft thud on my doorstep. Its edges were crisp, the seal unbroken. I flipped it over. The return address: First Northern Bank. I didn't open it. I placed it on the kitchen table, right where the morning light hit strongest, and left it there. I wasn't afraid of what was inside. I just needed one more night of silence before deciding what I would do with the last card I had left. The snow began just after midnight, light, soft flakes drifting down without sound. By morning, the city was blanketed, quiet, the kind of hush that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. Inside my apartment, it was no different. The manila envelope from the bank still sat untouched on the kitchen table. For days, it had been a silent roommate, waiting, daring me to break the seal. I made a pot of coffee, sat down across from it, and finally opened it. Foreclosure notice. Final balance. Date of repossession. Typed in bold red ink like blood drying on a cold countertop. No shock, no flinch, just a quiet exhale. I had expected it. The house wasn't mine anymore, if it ever truly had been. I refolded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and tucked it beneath a coaster like it was something that needed to be contained. Later that day, I headed into the garage to begin sorting what I would take. Vera was coming by in the evening with her truck, and I didn't want her lifting more than she had to. The garage smelled like dust and disuse. Cardboard, old tools, and a faint trace of motor oil. I moved a stack of boxes and found one tucked in the back corner. It was taped, but the handwriting across the top stopped me cold. For Merrick, from Pop. I sat down on the concrete floor, knees cracking as I bent, peeled the tape with deliberate care. Inside was a shoebox wrapped in a faded kitchen towel, and beneath that, paper. A single envelope. Inside, a letter. My grandfather's handwriting, looped and heavy, filled the page. If you're reading this, something in the house has broken. Not a pipe, not a shingle. Something deeper. Something between people. I held my breath and read on. Blood gives you the name. It doesn't give you the place. That part you earn, or you're denied. A pause. Then one more line near the bottom, written with what looked like hesitation or exhaustion. Don't carry what they won't hold with you. I didn't cry. The tears had come earlier in this story. This was clarity. I folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, and placed it in my jacket pocket. Then I returned to the house and pulled out a yellow legal pad. I began writing to Irene. I don't hate you, I wrote, but I also won't keep funding my own erasure. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even anger. It was something quieter than all that. Truth. A truth that didn't ask to be understood or forgiven. Only said. The letter filled 2 pages. I folded it clean, walked out to the tin trash can by the garage, lit a match, and watched the flame curl the paper inward like it was hungry for resolution. Ash drifted upward into the December air. I didn't look away. Around dusk, Vera pulled into the driveway. Her tires crunched over snow that had already begun to melt at the edges. She stepped out holding 2 ceramic mugs, steam curling up and vanishing into the cold. She handed one to me without a word. I took it. "You ready to see what life looks like when it's finally yours?" she asked, eyes steady. I nodded, not with hesitation, but with something deeper: readiness. Then I stepped outside with her, not away from the past, but forward into something unowned. The street was quiet when I turned onto our old block, the kind of hush that only early winter can command. Trees stood bare, fences braced for wind, and the house, once mine, once home, sat with its shutters pulled tight. A bright orange sign hammered into the frozen lawn read, "If I didn't get out of the truck, just let the engine idle," while I sat across the street and stared. There was nothing to retrieve, nothing to say, no keys left to hand over, no ground left to fight for. Just the truth settling. The phone vibrated. I played it without moving. "We lost everything," he said, voice cracked, accusatory. "Are you happy now?" I didn't listen to the rest. Deleted it, let the silence return and take its rightful seat beside me. Later that day, Vera and I sat in a sterile notary office downtown. The walls were lined with certificates and motivational quotes printed in cursive. The clerk was polite but detached, the kind of demeanor you develop when handling closures that aren't yours to feel. I signed the final document, transferring whatever remained of my legal stake in the property to the bank. I signed with a steady hand. The stamp came down. Done. "Congratulations," the notary said, though no one was celebrating. We walked out to the truck, hand in hand, neither of us speaking until we were blocks away. Our new apartment was waiting. 3rd floor, corner unit, a view of the old iron bridge that arched over the river like a question mark. The building was nothing special. Brick exterior, narrow hallways, neighbors who nodded but didn't pry. But inside, there was light. Bare windows, yes, but sunlight spilled across the wood floors like it belonged there. A small coffee machine sat on the counter, still wrapped in plastic. On the windowsill, Vera had placed a potted fern. It leaned slightly, alive, reaching. "No ghosts here," she said. "Only furniture," I answered. We unpacked slowly, methodically. No rush. No family waiting to critique where I placed the toaster or whether the mug cabinet made sense. Just us, building forward. That night, after she'd fallen asleep reading on the couch, I opened the journal I hadn't touched in a decade. I wrote without hesitation. "They rewrote the story," I scribbled, the pen gliding smooth. I closed the book. Then, after a pause, I added the truth I'd carried silently for too long. Some houses keep you captive, others set you free when you walk away. I closed the journal, set it on the nightstand, and for the first time in years, turned out the light without dread. Sometimes walking away isn't defeat. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. I used to believe that loyalty meant staying, enduring, and giving without limit. But I've learned that real strength is in choosing your peace over their approval. If you've ever felt like your love had conditions, like your worth had to be earned again and again, I hope my story reminds you. Your presence is not a debt. You don't have to keep proving you belong. We can't choose the families we're born into, but we can choose the boundaries we live by. And sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet door clicking shut behind you as you step into something better. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away to find yourself again? Or felt like your silence was being mistaken for agreement? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story resonated with you, if it stirred something deep, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't connect with you, let me know why. Let's talk. Let's grow. If you found value in this video, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next story. Your support means the world. See you next time.